All right. Hey, just first off, again, just want to say glad you're here. A little bit of normalcy here right before the test, the AP test. As I kind of wait for these Zoomers to get on, wanted to make some just general announcements so everyone is kind of aware of what's happening. All right. These people probably don't want to hear my AirPods. Yeah, there we go. Good. Bruce, so I'm just gonna stand up and talk for a second. All right, so let's talk real quick. First off, like I said, great, you made a vacation break. Everyone seems to be alive in here. It's good. Obviously be smart if you have any family members or anyone like that who gets sick or you travel or something. Don't just be smart, okay? You already made it through like 80% of the school year. You can get 20% more, okay? The next thing is the AP exam is scheduled for the last day of finals, okay? And due to the fact that there are over 100 or more AP World History students taking the exam, right now they have you taking it at home, okay? So that being said, obviously it would interfere with whatever finals you had on that last day. I've heard all sorts of different rumors about what they're going to do about finals, all the way from like not having finals or having them just as normal. But I did hear back from the IBAP coordinator that 900 students are affected by this change of having all AP tests that are over 100 being taken at home and not in school. So just because it's your last day of finals for the freshmen taking Whap, it means that there's another 650 other students that are affected as well. So it's not just us. That makes sense? So the decision is bigger than just you missing your biology exam or something like that. It goes beyond that. DBQs, okay? I went through them yesterday. I'm very impressed with our structure. We're getting it a lot better, which is huge because I almost think we're past where I've been. And the fact that we don't have to learn LEQs, which are like 3 different kinds of essays in one, means that we can really focus on the DBQ. I'm happy with where we're at there. Structure wise, content wise, we're getting better. So I did put some comments on. If there was an issue, I'd let you know. I'm not still grading to the point where the AP graders are going to be grading, but it's getting a little more thorough each time. Okay. But our range of bad to good is getting smaller, which is exactly where I want to be at. Okay. If I told you to make some changes and resubmit it, some of you I did, just because you just I don't know, if there were some issues, make sure you do that and send me a private message on Canvas, okay? I think there's a couple people in here. The other thing I was going to tell you was we only have 2 weeks left. 2 weeks of content. So you're April 16th. I think I put it on the Nearpod, but April 16th is going to be our last test. It's going to be a big one. It covers the Soviet Union, so 32 all the way through 37. All right, so make sure you've got those notes organized. You're taking notes, like I said, all that kind of stuff, right? Especially from discussions and any prep work you do on that. Once we get through that, we're going to be breaking into groups. We're going to be practicing a lot of SAQs, a lot of DBQs. And you're going to be broken into groups. You're going to be giving period-long presentations over a particular part of history. Okay, with the activities and whatnot, and it'll equate to about 200 points. So Again, you're sitting here saying like, okay, maybe I've got a C or D and I'm not really happy with where I'm at, or maybe I have a B plus, A minus, and I want to get an A. There is some extra credit available on it. Plus, students typically do well if they try. I mean, there's just it's one of those where if you have effort and you somewhat organized, it's usually nothing below like a B plus. I'd say only in certain circumstances have I ever given a C, and that was when a group got the time period 600 to 1450 and cut out Europe in the Middle Ages, the Ottoman Empire, and the Byzantine Empire. It's like, well, then I threw a conniption fit because that way, because you're basically reviewing for the whole team. That's what it is everyone's taking a section. So keep that in mind. I'll let you know more about that after we're done with content. Okay, but that's coming here. Other AP teachers might be doing that a little bit ahead of time. Tolman might have assigned his already. I don't remember if he did. Sometimes he does for spring break. So yeah, that's coming. All right. On that note, I think I'm good. Does anyone have a question? Yes.
What's the specific like date of the AP test?
Too much. It's a lot going on in the head right now.
Like somewhere.
So it was like the
Last day of finals is somewhere in the 20.
around there. I think it's a Thursday.
Yeah, it is a Thursday.
I'm not sure if it's morning or afternoon yet. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff to worry about before we're like, just because there's no way they can feasibly have you come into school for an hour, 2 hours, take a final, and then have you go home. You'll need parents driving you home. That's not going to fly. So they're going to have to leave. Whoever's taking the exam is going to have to stay at home that whole day.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I said it affects 800 people in that same position. So it's not just you. Okay. Good question. Anybody else? No? Okay. I've got a pretty light lesson today just because some of this I just wanted you to be able to see visually and not just from the textbook. And then I've got questions tonight to get a little more gritty in the textbook on things I wanted you to take out of it. And we're going to do a little bit of partner work with that. And then we'll go over those questions, cover China, and that'll be about it this week. Okay. We'll cover China and Vietnam a little bit. All right. Everyone cool with that? Good. All right. So this Nearpod that I have is going to kind of build on itself. So what I'm going to do with you is for those of you on Zoom, I'll take you to modules just so you can see, and those of you in the room, just so you see what's going on. There we go. All right, so like I said, 33, 34, 35, 37 are all going to be on the same test. Yep. So today, 4-7 Asia in the 20th century. Click on that, and your Nearpod looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and launch it from my end. And so, why did it not save? Save changes. Okay, here we go. All right, so your class I did second. This should be yours. So when you click on the link from Canvas, folks, it should take you to this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and copy the link and throw it into the chat box as well for anybody who is at home and needs it. And go ahead and sign on or log in, please, to the Nearpod. Like I said, I've got a couple of videos, a couple of thought-provoking questions. We'll go from there. Now, as we're doing this, I want everybody on Zoom to tell me one thing that they did over spring break that they enjoyed. Doesn't have to be I traveled to France. Well, you can't do that anyways. So Something could be like I slept a lot, whatever. I'm in person. Let's go around the horn. We'll start with Ethan. What do you got? Sometimes that's the best thing though. What do you got? What's that? Barbecue. Where? Gator hunting. Holy cow. Yep. Yo.
Oh, me?
Yeah, we gotta go.
I worked in the yard.
Okay, same here. You went where? Nice. Oh, I stayed up too late. 6 nights on the break. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Skating? Nice. That's fun. Is that cool? Nice. Did you eat some beignets? Yeah. Which one? What's it called? Huh. Ah. Oh, you did? Is that cool on Georgia Street?
Yeah, and then I also went to like the
Cool. Nice. Oh, that doesn't sound fun. Yep. Here you go, Sam.
I spent a lot of time.
Ah, nice. I stayed home. My kid taught my son how to fish with like the harder fishing pole. Now he wants to go. It's all he wants to do.
Is he like 10 months old?
No, he's like 20 now.
Oh.
I mean, it's still pretty crazy. It's pretty. He's wild child, but it's fun. Got the mulch put out. Went to a state park, McCormick's Creek. So we did a little staycation, had some fun. The people on Zoom, they went swimming. That's cool. A little weather action. Celebrated the birthday. Went camping. All right, good. Sounds like everyone at least got to chill a little bit. That's the whole point of the break. And now, if you're like me, you could use a longer one. Yes. Yep, I agree. Well, we only have 7 weeks of summer, so all right, let's move on. If you're not in this, you're not going to get your participation points the next 2 days because I'm going to. This is a doubler, so we're going to start off taking a look at Japan. All right, so I'm going to make one more feeble attempt at plugging this thing in and seeing if it will work. It's probably going to shut this whole thing off. Watch this. Okay, let's see. Works. Nope, it doesn't. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. All right. So, all right, brainstorm, write as many as you can. What problems did Japan face post World War II? Okay, got a minute and a half. I think they faced probably quite a few problems. So try to think of what you can remember. Okay, do that now. All right. So we got about 45 seconds left here. I am trying to change the sound so that we'll have it right when we start. Go that way. And on Zoom. All right. Loss of money, people, resource, and lost trust of America and America's allies. Jill, oh, gotta hide the names. That was good response, though. Nice work. Starvation, depends on other countries, economic hardships. Excellent. Destruction from atomic bombs. Yeah. Tension with the US, large cities were damaged. All right. Pretty much everyone's on the same track here. Imagine if your entire population was organized to wage war and then you lost. Again, we've talked about the situation before, Germany, World War I, right? Like, what do you do? So kind of in your mind, keep it in your head for a second of like the other situations we've talked about where countries have lost wars, like Russia to the Mongols, okay? Or again, Germany in World War I, or how did even looking at other situations, for example, the Crusades or things like that, events where somebody wins and loses, how do the losers, what ends up happening to them? Because this instance is a little bit different. Okay, and I think you're gonna be surprised by this. So let's go to the basics right here. Since somebody read this equation to me, I'm not very good at math. What's that say? Kaylee, you volunteered. Go ahead. Yep, thanks. So it says Germany. Then what's that? What's the gator eating? So which one's bigger? So Japan's bigger than Germany in area size. And then there's another gator. Alligator. Eat 'em up. Okay, that's how I used to remember this. So California is bigger than Japan and Germany. Crazy, right? But the population is 127 million people. And the life expectancy is 84 years old, or 88 for a female, and a fourth of the population is over 65. What does that tell you? Katie. Say that again. All right, less kids, or less kids, but people are living longer.
Yeah.
That's a long time to live, like an average citizen. Overpopulation, yeah. So one of the most densely populated areas of the world to this day, and not very big is what I was trying to get you to understand here, this slide. And they have a constitutional monarchy, meaning they still have a king or queen, but they have a constitution. Okay. All right. So again, the weird thing about this whole Nearpod is the taking of the notes. For CP, I made some note sheets. I didn't do it for you today. So let's talk about the occupation. Obviously, the Japanese surrendered in 45, and the United States occupied Japan in what was known as SCAP, Supreme Commander of the Allied Powers, General Douglas MacArthur, and all of his help, the basically government workers that came with him. And they had two main tasks: to demilitarize Japan and to democratize Japan. Okay, where did General Douglas MacArthur get his fame? Do you remember what he did prior to World War II? This is kind of like, I would call it a trivia question. I wouldn't expect anybody to know it. Do you remember what he did before World War II? He was the governor of the Philippines. All right. And so when the Philippines were occupied by the Japanese, he went down to Australia and led the US troops back to Japan. All right. So I've got a little bit of a video here for you. Students at home, I am going to attempt to make this work for you, but I'm also going to post, copy and paste this into the chat function for you, just in case the sound isn't great. You can watch it on your own as well, okay? But all right, so we're gonna go ahead and do teacher paste here, if I can figure out what I'm doing. And all right, little bit of bias in this, but I think it's pretty informative. So obviously there's about 5 questions. Let's rock and roll.
Japan during World War II was a harsh place, an ideological dictatorship dominated by the military, willing to fight to the death rather than face the shame of surrender. A decade later, Japan would be a staunchly pro-democratic, pro-Western power. So how did we go from this to this? The answer is SCAP. August 1945 wasn't a great time for Japan. The Soviets launched a massive invasion of Korea and Manchuria, while America dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, killing over 100,000 people. And to top it off, both were preparing to assault the home islands. The Japanese had offered to make peace in the past, but under pretty favorable terms. The Allies, on the other hand, wanted complete surrender. On August 14th, they died. So who or what is SCAP? Following Japan's surrender, President Truman appointed American General Douglas MacArthur as Supreme Commander for the Allied powers for the occupation. SCAP also refers to MacArthur's office and staff. The objective of SCAP was clearly defined. 1, disarm Japan's military capability. And 2, reform the nation into a pro-Western democracy. Hey, that sounds familiar, right? These were lofty goals for sure, but when MacArthur and
All right. Why do you think the goals of SCAP was to disarm and democratize Japan? Again, it's a why do you think? It's not, I know they did it. Don't tell me they did it. Why do you think they did it? It's a genuine question. Oh, man. To avoid further conflict and prevent the rise of communism. Katya, that was solid. Good answer. Make them less of a threat, get rid of communism, set up a stable government, avoid another Pearl Harbor, get another ally. Wow, we have a class of geniuses here. I would beg to ask most of my parents and their friends. I don't think they would be able to answer this with as astute responses as you. I wasn't lying about my broken belt. I got that out of the garage this morning. There's more over there. We're gonna have to walk to duty later. Forgot to do the Coles last night. Okay. So make sure you put an answer in here, but I think most of you understand Soviet Union's not that far away, are they? Neither was North Korea. So this was a little bit different of an occupation than in other instances. Oops. Pretty good at doing that. All right, let's keep going.
MacArthur and the Allies landed in Japan, they found a much more pressing concern: widespread starvation. See, Japan had spent the last 40 years annexing territory in China, Korea, and Southeast Asia, and it relied heavily on importing food. Now, all that territory had been liberated or occupied. To top it off, millions of Japanese who had resettled to these territories were forced out and sent back home. So now Japan had a serious problem. Millions of refugees and being cut off from its food supplies. MacArthur knew that he couldn't bring democracy to a starving population, and in the first year of occupation, America spent $92 million on food aid alone. Next came the question of how to reform the country.
All right. Why was the U.S. willing to spend $92 million on supplying the starving population food? I'm going to give you 90 seconds here. All right, somebody share your answer out loud. Let's get a little talking. Stop staring at the computer. We got Katie.
You have an ally in the area to work with them.
All right, so kind of like another Israel, like a island in the midst of China falling, or China hadn't fallen yet, but it was close. What do you think, kiddo?
I think the help the opposition with neither, if they really wanted to implement the like so they come in with the foundation. I think it's in the past, like if the people are unhappy with
Good. What do you think? We'll go around the horn. Lucy.
I just said that like I know in videos it would be pretty hard to like democratize like supplying that experience with
Good. Supplying them with food was the first step to being able to get them to listen to you, maybe? What do you think, Jill?
They were willing to do anything to make another major world power an ally for the threat.
Uh-huh. Ethan, do you have something? Okay. Anyone on Zoom want to share their answer with us? You don't have to. Just throwing it out there to see if you want to participate. So I'm not that teacher who just doesn't pay attention to you. Okay. 92 million bucks. What would this be equivalent to? What was the plan called in Europe to do the same thing at the end of World War II? Do you remember right? Here's a little compare and contrast. We got the Marshall Plan was the same thing. Yeah. To make sure that those countries didn't fall to communist powers or the Soviet Union. So similar move here. Is anybody asking themselves, where is the United States getting all this money from? Jill?
Well, I was wondering why they didn't spend that money on starving population in the US.
Okay, good question. Hannah? No, not war rep. We never got paid back war reparations. No country could afford it. American tax dollars, Jill, and the fact that our companies, this is called the baby boom generation. Basically, after World War II, a lot more minorities got to work, a lot more people in general, women, and our factories were booming because we are now exporting to all these areas of the world that were considered our allies. All right. We got 100% participation. Excellent. Let's move on here. I always do that. Somebody tell me not to. Okay.
Unlike in Nazi Germany, where almost every branch of government had to be purged or reorganized, in Japan, the civil government was left mostly intact. The emperor was still the divine head of state, worshipped by the people, and MacArthur knew that if he had the emperor on his side, his work would be much easier. But if the Allies imprisoned, or worse, executed the emperor, then MacArthur knew there would be unrest and rebellion. The Allies went to pretty extraordinary lengths to keep the emperor in place, if not in power. Before the Tokyo war crime trials, officials from SCAP and the Japanese government worked behind the scenes to make sure the emperor wouldn't be implicated for any of Japan's many war crimes. Instead, much of the blame was placed on the military leadership and the prime minister, Hideki Tojo. And when the trials were conducted, the entire imperial family, including those that served in the military, got off completely.
Is that crazy?
Whether or not this was morally justified is still contested by historians to this day. In any case, with the emperor's cooperation, the reforms the Allies imposed on Japan went through much more smoothly. Now, smoothly is a relative term, and things were definitely still difficult. When the Allies first occupied the country, they had to deal with a multitude of problems. These fell into a few broad categories. 1, demilitarization. 2, economic reform. 3, social reform. And the ways they tackled these problems were varied. Censorship was common. For example, it was illegal to print criticism of the occupation or the Allied powers, or report on crime. They also freed political prisoners and activists from prison, using them to sway the population against fascism. Japan's military was disarmed and its wartime industry was dismantled. The British Commonwealth Occupation Force, some 40,000 personnel, were charged solely with dismantling Japan's war industries. Not only did the Allies have to disarm the military, but also the national spirit. Shinto was removed as the state religion, and some of its militarist and nationalist teachings were banned. It was illegal to display the rising sun flag without special permission. Pacifists and activists were free and allowed to influence politics. And feminist groups brought from America brought political education to Japanese women, who would finally get the ability to vote in 1946. All these changes over time led to a reduction in military zeal in the population. Skip.
All right, so do you think it was morally or ethically right for the US to come in and socially mandate what the Japanese could or could not do and why? I think this is an interesting question. What do you think? No right or wrong answers here, Zoomers. Just want to get your opinion, want you to think. I thought about this a lot when I was in college, learning about this topic. I still think about it today. Oh, hello. We're talking about, this is a good question. What do you think? Do you think it was morally or ethically right for the US to come in and socially mandate what the Japanese could or could not do in terms of even dictating their religion, their right to freedom of speech or press?
Well, I mean, if the US can't enforce religion on their people, like the Europe.
Wow, that's a deep thought right there.
But I mean, you know, when you lose the war, you
So you what?
can't. Right.
Absolutely not. They passed boundaries. It's not okay for other countries to have that kind of power over others. What happened to freedom of speech and free will? The US should not dictate another country's way of life. I'm leaning more towards that. It wasn't morally right, but essentially the US was manipulating Japan. I believe that the US should mind their own national business and not interfere and mandate other countries. I do like this because this is you all thinking and sharing your own opinion. This is why I want to do this.
Can you see the names on your phone?
I can if I feel like it. Just press search. I'll look at them later, but I don't want them to all see the names, you know.
Did anybody support?
Um,
Oh, yeah. Some of that.
to some extent, the sugar culture is not ethically right. The US did a fair job of blending Western ideas and West Japanese culture, resulted in some good, like more rights for women. On the other side, bruised nationalism, but they were so nationalistic, they tried to take over the whole world. I mean, they tried to make the Chinese their slaves.
Oh, there you
Well, I mean, if you know the history of it, yeah,
go. But they created Mario.
yeah, with the help of the United States.
Actually, if you hear me,
No, so I mean, do you guys see how this is ethical dilemma we call it? I mean, if you want me to play the side of the United States, it was ethically right because we needed peace, and this was a way to guarantee peace, right? If you want to play the side of the Japanese, is they lost the war, but doesn't mean that they should have to lose their own cultural identity, right? So, and destroying the culture, as we know, can be a very dangerous thing, right?
Image of breaking right into it.
This is interesting, Jill.
Doesn't this get into what's called like Machiavellian concept?
Machiavellian concepts, yeah,
like the edge of by the means.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I think where somebody wrote in here, the US kind of came in with, like I said, someone wrote right here, the US already bombed Japan, had no right to come in and try to control its actions. Well, they bombed them, they came in and tried to create what you would call security, and then they left appropriately. Some might say that was okay. Again, it's an opinion. All right, let's move on here. We've got a couple minutes left. We're never gonna
And
get
also
through this.
made two sweeping changes to Japan's economy. Since the Meiji period, Japan's Industrial Revolution, most businesses in the country were controlled by a few powerful monopolies called zaibatsu. These zaibatsu owned businesses, banks, influenced politics, and destroyed competitive businesses. SCAP dissolved 16 zaibatsu and reorganized many more into smaller business interests. They would have dismantled them all, except as the threat from the Soviets in Asia increased. America repurposed them to rapidly industrialize Japan as an ally against the communists. Most of Japan's farmland was controlled by powerful landlords and corporate entities, effectively turning the farmers into peasants. SCAP purchased nearly 6 million acres, over a third of Japan's farmland, and resold it to the tenant farmers at extremely low prices. Millions of farmers became landowners, and the semi-feudal system was abolished. SCAP also pressured the government into adopting a new constitution. The new constitution was written by 2 American Army officers and several expert advisors chosen by MacArthur. Japanese politicians, activists, and lawyers were also consulted to make approved changes. The most famous of these is Article 9, which outlines war as a means for the government to settle disputes, effectively disarming Japan. This provision was crafted by the Japanese, most prominently Prime Minister Kajiro Shidehara. Other clauses included general elections, free speech, equal rights, freedom of religion, right to fair trial, and the vote for women. The new constitution was voted on and accepted by the Japanese government, and the first free elections were held on April 10, 1946, with Shigeru Yoshida becoming the first democratically elected Prime Minister of Japan. Shigeru Yoshida's policies focused on unrestrained economic growth and rebuilding Japan's lost industry and infrastructure. Japan's foreign policy placed complete reliance on the US for military protection, and the money saved on not having to build up a military was put towards industrial expansion. This, along with American support, helped Japan's industry to grow. With the need for material during the Korean War, Japan experienced economic recovery and grew to become a world industrial leader, and the 3rd largest economy in the world today. The occupation of Japan continued until 1949, when MacArthur restructured SCAP to return most of the power back to the new democratic Japanese government. On April 28, 1952, the Allied powers left and full sovereignty was restored to Japan. American military personnel remained, but this time with the permission of the Japanese government, not as occupying forces.
All right, so serious question. Oh, Jill, hit it first.
Oh,
What?
no, I have to go see my husband.
Okay, do it.
I don't know.
Pick odds or evens tonight for your homework, okay? It's on pick odds or evens for the reading questions tonight on your homework.
Okay.
All right, so SCAP, success or failure and why? Be ready to explain your answer. What do you think? Have a good rest of your day. Oh, you don't know where he, I think he's in the, so go to the lower information, or the lower student center. And there'll be a little thing on the end that way that says like counselors. Go in there, guidance, and it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, success or failure and why? What do you think? Anybody in the room want to volunteer to answer some, hopefully somebody that hasn't answered yet? I just got all of you to say it was wrong, but now we want to say if it's a success or not. It's a totally different question. Ethan, I want your quiet genius to help us out. What do you think? What's that? Not sure. Okay, that's. I think I wouldn't be sure either, maybe, but okay. Guess what do you think, Stanley? Because it increased what? All right, so it increased their economy and their ability to make money. Some would say the lines were too much. The fact that they can't wage war. That's mandated in their actual constitution. succeeded because they ultimately disarmed and democratized Japan, even though they stripped some culture. And that's a good point too. Again, not a right or wrong answer here, totally. Brooke, that's a good answer. SCAP was a success because they were able to demilitarize Japan and make them only use their military for defensive purposes. They were able to introduce a new constitution in Japan, allowing them more rights and freedoms for their people. You know who pays for the Japanese military today, right? US. I mean, they have a very small military because the United States has multiple military bases still in Japan. To basically for the Pacific Fleet, and we've been doing that since 1949. All right, still got a couple people need to answer. We need to move on here, so we are going to. All right, so this peace clause, this is a big one. So in your notes, if you didn't get down when you were taking notes, Article 9 in the 1947 Constitution, the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right. That sovereign means independent right of the nation, and threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. So it, I guess, essentially, as somebody already said, cannot go to war to settle a dispute. What do they have to do, Griffin? What do they have to do if they don't want to get into an argument with someone? Use what? What are you and I doing right now? You have to have a conversation. They have to use what's called diplomacy. They cannot use war as a means to threaten. Land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. Has that been broken some? Yes. They have a small military, but it's not. I mean, they spend so little money on it compared to the other major powers. All right, everyone good on this? The peace clause. The other thing I wanted you to take a look at was Japan's economic growth. So output is like what you are making. Take a look at Japan compared to Oceania, the European Union, the US, and then Germany, France, Italy, and the UK. What do you notice that that's a percentage of growth? What do you notice, Owen? Yeah, very low unemployment rates, and even though there was high inflation, still pretty impressive output, economic growth, and unemployment. Yeah. Look at that 9.7 number, 1960. That's only 15 years after the war. They're growing at double the rate or more of the United States. And a 1.2 unemployment rate. Look at Germany and Japan. Almost, that's incredible. That's incredible. That's almost unhealthy. It means you have more jobs available than you do people. Indianapolis had that problem before COVID hit, actually. Where we had a reverse unemployment rate. Part of that was due to the kind of jobs that were available, though. You can see also, though, how the numbers are pretty much tied to the United States as well. Do you see that? How incrementally they're pretty much, again, tied to the first world countries. All right. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at South Korea. I guess I would throw a few things in there. Japanese culture has not been destroyed. Japanese practice Shintoism and Buddhism still. They just do it in their houses. They don't do it publicly or outwardly. There's still reverence to ancestors, and also Japanese men work at a rate that is more than the United States. And Germany and other westernized countries, they have a large problem with alcoholism as well as like infidelity. Women still don't have equal rights to men in Japan. That's something kind of important if you didn't jot that down from your reading. And one of the things, because their economy has done so well, is there's a lot of emphasis on working harder and harder and more hours in order to continue to achieve profits and profit margins. So that's become an issue socially for the country. And then people are having less babies because of the overpopulation and the fact that people are living so long. Yeah.
There was that China after, they're like, visiting where you live in.
China was the one that had the two baby rule. Yeah. It's been, they say it's gone now, but again, they don't publicly release everything. All right, we're gonna look at South Korea as an example here. I hope this saved. It did. Okay, so the first thing I guess I wanted you to take a look at is look at the extremely impressive growth of South Korea's gross domestic product. Does everybody know what gross domestic product is? That's how much domestically you're making and selling. Okay. You'll notice this is 1961. So after the Korean conflict, that incrementally, they are rising, and they're very much tied to the United States economy. Most of you don't, I guess we talked about this a little bit. Remember in 1979, there was the oil crisis in Iran. We talked about the hostage crisis last week or 2 weeks ago. You see how their output went down. And then also in 1998, have you ever heard of the dot-com bust? Where these were a lot of investors waged their money on internet startup companies. And you see Korea was directly affected by that in a negative gross domestic product. Look at 2001. You see 9/11 happened. Look at 2008. You see that they barely rose at all, their gross domestic product. Okay, that was the last kind of crisis before the pandemic here, economically speaking. So very tied and aligned to the United States as well. And I kind of want to show you why. So this is a dry video, trust me, but it's really, to me, it's kind of fascinating in the sense that it goes through why the world is the way it is. Okay, I'm going to try to get through as much as we can. I know the bell's going to ring in about 8 minutes. All right, 7 minutes.
When South Korea was first established, it
Guys,
was one
sound
of
a
the
little-
poorest nations in the world. The country relied on foreign aid to survive. From 1962 until 2018, South Korea's economy on average grew 7% annually. Today, South Korea has become one of the most prosperous nations in the world, and it regularly provides foreign aid to many struggling nations. The first half of the 20th century was marked with tragedy for South Korea. In 1910, Japan annexed the Korean peninsula and controlled it until 1945. When Japan unconditionally surrendered to the Allied forces, Korea was split into two nations, North and South Korea. South Korea suffered another setback when the Korean War began in the 1950s. War had destroyed South Korea, and the country became one of the poorest nations in the world. No one believed South Korea could escape poverty, but hope came in the form of a new government. In the 1960s, General Park Chung-hee gained control of South Korea through a military coup. Up until the 1960s, South Korea was heavily dependent on foreign aid, but the Park government wanted an end to it. The government wanted the nation to be independent and successful. The Park government wanted South Korea to be a market-based economy to improve the overall efficiency of the South Korean economy. As South Korea didn't have any natural resources to export, the government decided the country needed to specialize in the export of manufactured goods.
All right. How did the government decision to focus on manufactured goods change South Korea? What do you think? I mean, they're a country with no natural resources, which is unbelievable. This is gonna have to be a 2-dayer, so probably gonna lean towards stopping here and we'll pick it up tomorrow. But let's make sure everybody answers this question. They could buy natural resources and produce manufactured good in turn for a profit. Bingo. Help improve economic growth since they had no resources, improve their economy. Consumer economy, more urbanization, factory jobs. Bingo. They are definitely an anomaly. One of the top, I think, top 15 largest economies, and you can see how small of a country they are. All right. We're gonna kind of see the way that they went about doing this, which we're gonna have to wait till tomorrow to do, okay? I will apologize. The timing is a little different when you're making these Nearpods and you want to actually talk about things versus just racing through it, okay? So make sure we got 2 more people that want to respond here. I'm gonna call what I would call like a pause on this. So it'll be a 2-day participation because I'll have China tomorrow, which is going to be a little more note taking. And I want to show you what you're going to do for homework tonight. So those of you on Zoom, I only have 4 of you, which is perfect. So I'm going to go back to the page for today. So if you click on homework, it says group questions. And so it says split the questions between your partner. The older partner takes the odd numbers and the younger partner takes the even numbers. So in here, just you 6 go straight back. You 6 go straight back next to the person next to you. The 6 of you go straight back, and then Ethan and Victoria, you guys decide who's older and split up the questions that way, okay? I will make an assignment on this in a second. I haven't got a chance to do it. I'll post it on the module, okay? So you need to communicate, see who's older between the person next to you. All right, Katya and Lily, you there? All right, you 2 take odds. Liliana and Vivian, you take evens, okay? All right, thanks everybody for your participation. Wish you were here, but understand, okay? Do you have any questions for me? All right, sounds good. I'll make the assignment. I'll have it up there in a minute.